Good morning, good morning, good morning. Actually, good afternoon for pretty much everyone, as it's 12:30 here. Welcome to the Speakeasy community, the Sims Distillery community, and for those in an Entrepreneur's Advantage network. If you are here, you know the scoop. Just make a little post in there so I'm not just talking to myself. I had a event shortly called the Speakeasy Scottsdale. It was the lockdown edition. And we had a question in there that was brought up about products and services, how to attract your ideal client, and wealth came up. Well, not wealth, monetary came up. How do we talk to, millionaires? How do we talk to billionaires? And all these kind of things came up. And there was an intimidation. People were physically intimidated about talking to a millionaire and billionaire. So what they would do was they would build up a product and service and then market it to a community that couldn't afford them. Now, I never quite understood that. Surely if you've got a product or service, market it to people where being able to afford it is not a question, is not a problem. And as many of you know, I had at our top 93 clients where most of those were high millionaires or billionaires. So I've been used to working with millionaires and billionaires for 20 plus years. And I wanted to give you some of the experiences I've had with how to react to a billionaire, how to communicate with them, how to look at the solution. And I wanted to give you all of this information. But I thought to myself, that would be one thing. But how could we make it a little bit cooler? Easy. Get a billionaire to talk to us. So I actually phoned up a good friend of mine, Naveen, and Naveen's going to come into you here, and I'm going to welcome him to the show. Naveen, how you doing?
Steve, what a pleasure to be here. Good to see your face and good to hear your voice.
We were just chatting about it earlier. We met like about 8, 9, 10 years ago. So it's been a long time with Peter Diamandis, actually. So it's been a while. Now, thank you very much for being game to be on this. Because it's okay for me, who's not a billionaire, to talk about how I've communicated with millionaires and billionaires. And I know it's crude to say, because I know, you have a resistance against it, but we've got you on here quite simply because you're well known as a billionaire. Okay. I know, and we're going to quickly move on there because I know that you don't like talking about your monetary content. You like talking about the impact. And that's the first thing we want to bridge. What is the biggest mistake people make when approaching someone with a lot of money that's recognized as having a lot of money?
Well, I think first of all, the fact you think of them as a person who has money, it is no different than saying, I approach you because you're black, I approach you because you're brown. I mean, it is just one of the phenotype. It is what it is, right? You have to approach people based on what they care about, what matters to them. And I really think this is, very interesting and something I learned actually from my oldest son. He was, give or take, about 16, 17 years old. And it so happened I was at the Bill Gates CEO Summit, and there were all these, mega CEOs there. And there was this gentleman from India, Ratan Tata. And it's just, only reason I mentioned it, just, amazingly great guy. Yeah. Everyone in the room is going out and shaking his hand and say, oh, my dad used to work for you. How much I love you. I'm just, and literally, and he said, thank you, and moved on. Turn comes my son. He simply looks to him and says, Mr. Tata, I have an organization that is helping young entrepreneurs be successful. I would like you to speak to them. And would you consider helping these young entrepreneurs be successful? He looks at him and he says, would you come back at 9 p.m. after this is over and let's talk about how I can do that? And I looked at him, I was like, oh my God, every one of us was so scared to even ask him anything. And here you are. And he says, because what do you expect him to say when you say, I'm glad to meet you, I'm so honored to meet you, I'm so glad, I touched your hand, can I take a picture? He doesn't even remember you. And the fact you ask not something for yourself, but for someone else whose lives could be better, guess what? He is willing to give his time, which is the most valuable thing he has. And once you can capture people's time and people's brain width, money will follow. But if you ask for money, nothing will follow, right? And that's the beauty of the thing, right? So the thing is, in my opinion, this is really the another interesting thing I learned was, to some extent, money and beauty can actually be the curse that God gives you. Because think about, people look at this stuff and say, oh my God, wouldn't that be my life be so easy if I was the most beautiful girl, the Miss Universe, or I was the richest person. But imagine what happens when you get there. The people who are attracted to you are not attracted to you who you are inside. They're attracted to you what people think of you from outside. And generally, people who are coming to you are not the people you ever want to be talking to, because no one spends time trying to understand what matters to you. And that is the key. If somebody was to come to me and ask me a simple question, what is it that you're working on and how can I be helpful to your mission? And Steve, just 5 minutes ago, we talked about that and say, what can you do that can help what matters to me? And I asked very simply, can you help me spread the mission that I'm spending and dedicating 10 years of my life, is to making sure everyone in the world can be prevented and reversed from having a chronic diseases. I lost my dad to cancer. I don't want anyone else to suffer from it. I want to prevent these chronic diseases, whether it's obesity, diabetes, autoimmune disease, depression, anxiety, cancer. These are all the things that can be prevented and reversed. Anyway, my point is, when you ask me that, I am here to talk to you. When you could have said, hey, I will pay you money to come, I would have said, I just don't have time. I wish I had time, right? Or anything you approached me about money, the answer would have been, look, Steve, just talk to someone else. I would have said, oh, your foundation needs some money, talk to my foundation guy, and I will connect you, and moved on, right? But that is what matters. When you approach me for things that matter to me, I am willing to give you my time, and everything else will come from there.
Now that's the first. You're perfect. I love you. You know I do. But you've already hit the first point that I discovered when working with people with money, was they value time more importantly than anybody else. They look at it as something that no matter how much is in the bank, they can't buy. So they value it, and they have to focus on that. The other thing that I've noticed is that there's a suspicion. So when people approach people that have a lot of money, especially if you're in a position of profile like Elon Musk and people like that, they are suspicious, going, well, what does this person want? As your son did, if you quickly approach the person with a value for them, now you can engage in a conversation. You've got all of the suspicion out of the way. So time is very, very heavily focused. I also want to lead with you on failure, because I've noticed, and we've already mentioned Elon Musk, and we've mentioned Peter Diamandis, we've mentioned Raj. The funny thing about Raj was, when we did the X Prize event, I gave Raj a lift to his private aircraft in my truck. I had a truck at the time, and it wasn't until he got out and we'd been having a conversation that someone introduced me to who I'd just given a lift to in my truck, which was very, very funny there. But there's the way that people, successful people, let's get the money thing out of the way. Successful people view failure. They lean into it as an education. Could you talk to us more about how you look at failure?
Well, remember, the failure is a wrong term, because your idea that you have may or may not work. An idea that does not work is simply a stepping stone to a different idea and a bigger idea. So, so you only fail in life when you give up. Everything else is a pivot. And when I say pivot, means everything else just becomes a learning experience of what went wrong, how do you fix it so actually things work. And I believe it was Edison who said that I didn't fail 10,000 times. I discovered the 10,000 different ways the light bulb doesn't work. So it allowed me to build the one that actually did work, right? And that is really the thing, is that every single experiment that doesn't work allows you to come up with a new experiment that might work, right? And I think one of the very interesting thing about when you look as an entrepreneur, in this, by the way, I learned so much from our children. It's mind-boggling to me. So our daughter, who just started a company, and I asked her and say, hey, so how is your company coming along? And she looks at me really funny and said, Dad, you know nothing about entrepreneurship, do you? And it's like, I think I'm known for being an entrepreneur. And he says, I mean, seriously, this is what his word. She says, the job of an entrepreneur is to simply experiment to find out if there is a company here. I'm not building a company. I'm simply experimenting to find out, is there a company here, right? And that to me was such a great thing to say that, you build a company later. First, find out, is this a market fit? Is this what people want? Is this what people care about? And to me, that's really an amazing, amazing answer, how much you can learn from a young children, right? And I was now teaching them about this idea that when you start a company, this framework of why this, why now, why me, which is when you start something, you ask yourself, God forbid, if I'm actually successful in doing what I'm about to be doing, would it help a billion people live a better life? And the reason I use that matrix is very simple. And by the way, in every presentation I do, I say, my personal belief is the only way to build a successful enterprise in the long term is to stay focused on helping people live better, because now you have a massive marketplace. If you can find a product or a service that helps a billion people, you can create $100 billion company. You find something that can help 10 million people, you can create $1 billion company. But the point is, you have to stay focused on helping people. You never focus on starting a company to make money. And that's where most people go wrong. They think, I want to start something to make money. Making money is a byproduct. It happens when you are helping people live better. It is not the goal. It is an outcome. And that's what people don't realize. And I know a lot of young people, in fact, I say something really crude to young people that they get it. I say, making money is like having an orgasm. If you focus on it, you're never going to get it. So just enjoy the process, right? And that's how you do it.
Oh, that's the soundbite. That's the soundbite there. You've been giving us advice on the climax. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So I love the way that a shall we say, a wantrepreneur fails at something and leans back, cries, holds their head to go, oh my God, everything went wrong. Yet an entrepreneur looks at that as an education and leans into it to go, well, okay, how can I get education out of that mistake? And I really like your refining of that. The other thing,
can I just actually expand on the concept that you just mentioned? As an entrepreneur, the other thing that I really learned is your life of an entrepreneur is like your heartbeat. That's the only way you know when you're alive. How do you know when you're alive? Is you have a pulse. What does a pulse look like? Up and down and up and down and up and down. When you have a smooth life, you're dead. Now imagine how many people want to live a smooth life. What they're really asking for is, I want to live a life of a dead person. I want to live a dead life is when you're looking for a smooth life. You have to expect it and you have to accept it, that this is going to go up and down. When you are down, all you have to do is hunker down and know the next beat is going to be up. And when you are on top of that beat, always remember that winter is coming and winter will come. Don't get too cocky. Don't get too arrogant, because winter will be coming soon.
I love that. I absolutely love that. How do you look at people? Because I noticed within my experience that when you get to a certain level, you start valuing relationships greater, and you employ the person rather than the resume. Because let's be blunt, there's a lot of people with doctorates, MBAs, degrees that are stupid people. So people respect relationships and they look at the person rather than the resume. Is that am I right? Is that true?
Actually, it's more than that. I think in olden days we were taught when we were young, who you know matters, and it's all about who you know. And what I learned in life is it actually doesn't really matter who you know, because people don't do business with you because you know them. There are 3 more steps to that happens. And then they say, well, no, they have to know you. That is a bit of opening. Then they have to like you. And even if they like you, they still don't do business with you unless they trust you. Even if they trust you, they still don't do business with you until they respect you. And that is the key where the things get done. So let me tell you, you and I like you. I might even, in fact, I know you, I like you. And in fact, I might even trust you that you're a good human being. I'm going to even let you play with my children, right? But if I don't respect you as a business person, I'm not going to invest in your company. So just because I know you, I like you, I trust you, doesn't mean I'm going to invest in you. And that comes because I respect you as a business person. And that respect has to come. And that's what people need to focus on. When they approach, they need to come up with the humility of what they know, what they don't know, what problem they are solving, and why it matters to them. So to me, if you really, I invest in people when I see the obsession to solve the problem. When not the passion, because I think the passion is for losers. Passion is for hobbies. The people who are truly successful have obsession to solve the problem. And they wake up in the morning, jump out of the bed. And that is how I look at the equation, is saying, it doesn't matter what you're doing in life. When you wake up in the morning and you don't jump out of the bed, whatever you're doing, you should quit and work on something else. Every single day, I wake up around 4 a.m. and I jump out of the bed with joy, wanting to do that. And that obsession, that fire in people's eyes is what really drives them forward. So if I meet someone who comes to me and says, this is my true obsession, this is why I'm going to solve the problem, and when I do, this is the impact I'm going to have on the society. They don't come and say, oh, I can, a company is going to be $100 million in 4 years and you should invest. The valuation is only $2 million. Who has time to be dealing with that stuff? You need to come and say, this is what I am doing, which is going to help 1 billion people live a better life. Here is a problem, and this is my unique approach to solving it. And don't ask for money, because I can tell you, guaranteed answer is going to be no. You simply said, would you be open to my calling you and giving you an update every couple of times as I'm making a progress, so you know how I'm doing and you can guide me and help me? Because if you can get 2 minutes of their time, everything else will happen later.
I love that. There was a little story, just to give you an example, on the monetary content. I was I worked, as everyone knows, with Elton John for 8 years.
Yep.
And I was working at his Oscar party, and I was with him and I was chatting with him because we wanted him to do a serenade for a client of ours for their wedding. Now, I'd worked with him for a long time, so I'd built up that trust and that respect, and we're having a conversation, and this gentleman interrupted us and is actually a very, very wealthy gentleman. He interrupted us and he was like, so Elton, I just wanted to ask you, I've got this event coming on. How much will it cost me to have you do X, Y, Z? And he hit Elton with a direct question of how much will it cost? And immediately, in a heartbeat, without the dates even being mentioned, Elton turned around and said, I'm not available then, thank you very much, and waved to one of his security to move him on. Because rather than appealing to the point, the project, how it impacts other people, what the emotion is, he went in with a price tag, and no one wants to be a prostitute. No one wants to be purchased. And he literally just dispelled him because of the approach. And he came with a big checkbook, but he never even got that far to discuss it.
That's exactly what happens. Yes.
People don't like that. That's good. All right. So we've discussed the time. We've discussed the respect. I love that. I want to take a digression into a slight aspect when you talk about respect. I love the levels that you went through about no, all of those areas up to the respect. A lot of people today spend a lot of time focusing on their brand, their show, kind of look at me, I've won these awards. And how do you look through that to actually look at the real person? Too many people spend too much time focusing on the shiny persona. You wanted to talk about the respect. How can they focus on that, on what they stand for to gain that respect, rather than spending too much focus on their brand?
And I think it's really simple. So as you said, if people create a brand, I am rich, and then they approach you with a checkbook, right? If people think I am popular. They say, you know, I have 5 million followers on TikTok, or you know, I have 7 million followers on Instagram, because that's what they stand for every day. That's what matters to them. And guess what? Or a person who simply says, I am dedicating a decade of my life to solving this problem of X, Y, and Z, then you know that's what matters to them. So how you approach a person simply describes who you are. And the best example I can give you, I'm not going to name the person, one of the richest person, I was sitting on a table and the person's back was towards me, and I just wanted to introduce, and I said, hello, I'm Naveen Jain. And he says, I am X. And I said, and I said, oh, and what do you do? And he looks at me that his world has crumbled. You mean you don't know who I am? I mean, and it's like he looks at me and he says, excuse me? And I said, I have no idea. I just wanted to have a chit chat. What do you do? And he says, do you know I am CEO of blah? And I said, no. And he says, so what do you do? I say, I'm an entrepreneur dedicating my life to helping 1 billion people live a better life. I'm not a CEO. I'm not anybody. This is who I am. And my point was, most men have such a difficult time describing themselves because they describe themselves with their business card. I am a CEO of blah. And guess what happens? Even when they retire, you know what they say? I'm a former CEO of blah. They never are anything but their business card. Right? And that is the difference. If you can get past and say, this is who I am, and this is what matters to me, that's how you should introduce yourself. Not, I am blah, and this is my title.
So introduce yourself with your obsession, not your business card.
That's right.
That is absolute gold. David, I knew you were going to be great, but this is absolutely brilliant. All right, so we focus on the branding. When people, let's get some more. How upsetting is it to you when people approach you because of your bank account?
Well, obviously, first of all, it is demeaning and degrading to anyone who gets approached for any other reason, right? Is because someone happens to be, a particular type, right? So anyone, whether it's money or someone, nobody wants to be pigeonholed based on a certain one trait of themselves. So I think it's extremely demeaning to walk up to someone who is, say, black and say, do you know this another person who is also black, who is a friend of mine? Really? So just because he's black, he should be my friend? I mean, a lot of people come to me, it's like, oh, you're from India. Do you know this person? It's like, there are 1.4 billion of them. I mean, okay, if you look at me as an Indian, sure. I always end up saying, yeah, he's probably he's my cousin. I mean, but point is that it's really when people think of you just by looking at you, they can define who you are. You're rich, or you're brown, you're black, you're blah. And that to me is extremely demeaning to anyone who gets approached for any reason, for anything, right? So I think we have to learn to get to know a person beyond what their outside persona is. And I think it's really interesting is what you may find is that a lot of people who are persona-wise different who they really are. And really surprising to me was, like getting to know Richard Branson. And the only reason I'm not dropping names, the only reason I mention is that it was such a great contrast. And when I met him the first time, and he just didn't say anything, and I'm thinking, really? I mean, and it turns out as I got to know him, he's one of the most shy person. He just doesn't really have in him to go out and introduce. He's just a shy person. And I thought that came out of arrogance. That was because my own self-esteem must have been low for me to think he's arrogant, versus me realizing that he just may be a person who just is very shy. And as you got to know him, I mean, you suddenly realize he just really is that person, right? Even though his persona is this extrovert out there, out in the world. As a person, you will never know. I mean, he is probably most family-oriented person. Every time I talk to him, he talks about his grandkids and Holly and Sam and Joan. I mean, this is just, amazingly great person who would, if you look at simply that, hey, he didn't talk to you because he was at an event, it's not because he's arrogant. He just may be a shy person.
Yeah, we sadly lost his mum. I worked for his mum for the Rock the Casbah event for I think 3 or 4 years, and we sadly lost Eve.
Lovely. By the way, what a lovely human being. Even I remember, spending time with her. She was late 80s, early 90s, and she was just literally the firebrand. I mean, she just running around everywhere on her own.
Yeah, she was a firecracker. I remember being at an event with her, and you're right, she was an elderly lady. I remember being at an event and someone hadn't got a drink, and she got off the table to get someone the drink.
Exactly.
And I just thought to myself, that's the kind of person I like. So she was a solid girl there. I have noticed a lot of people, and I love the way you brought this up, because a lot of people see people in the press. They see people on video. Elon Musk's a perfect example. Peter Diamandis is a perfect example. They see them on the press, on the videos, on the TV, and they get an assumption of the person they are. And a lot of the people that were mentioned, they're very quiet people. And so they see them when they're in promotion mode or when they're being interviewed, and they go, oh, that must be the person they are. They meet them, suddenly find that they are quiet, and they take that quiet, and in a lot of places, that introvertness, and they take that as arrogance. And that's your fault, not theirs. But you've now created, oh, that person's out. They're not arrogant. How many people do you find like that are actually rather quiet?
I would say more often than not, people who are super successful, even though in the media they are this extrovert people, in their private life, I mean, they really are very family oriented, very, very, I would say, deep spiritual, quiet introvert people.
Yeah, and it's your fault if you walk up and you paint them with a different brush. People don't realize that. I've actually been stood next to very powerful people, and I've been in a conversation like me and you are chatting now, very relaxed, just chilling. And then people have been kind of like pointing in the background, and you can see it through your pencil. And then they walk up to them, and the person that I'm with, because they're in the public eye, they suddenly get tense. Because they don't know why this person, are they going to look for money? Are they looking for an endorsement? Do they want a selfie? And it's a very uncomfortable situation for the person, because they don't know who that person is that's coming up. And it makes them feel uncomfortable.
It does. I mean, I think all of us do. I mean, if you really think about it, if someone, a stranger, suddenly starts walking towards you, I mean, you start to say, wait a sec, what does he want? What does he want, right? And given in our current world, you have to always be very careful. I mean, how do you take a picture? I mean, they can come back later and say, oh, he touched me, he did that. I mean, you have to be nowadays, like, your hands up here, like.
But it's true. It's true. It's the world we're in. We have to be careful now. But the one thing that I noticed, just to give people a tip out there, whenever I walk up to people of, public eye or profile or anything like that, I immediately go, hey, how you doing? My name is SteveDSims. You don't know me. And I get to the point. Now, you use the example perfectly of your son doing that with Raj. Because it straight away calmed Raj down, because he knew what the point of the conversation was. That transparency was able to relax everyone. So anyone that wants to reach out to anyone of power, or Naveen, when you bump into him, get to the point quickly, so that Naveen hasn't got to be panicky, or anyone else has not going to be. Calm people down and have a conversation as an equal. Would you say that was accurate?
That is very accurate. And the only other things I would add to that would be, Steve, don't ask for money. They don't invest because you came and shook their hand or took a picture with them and say, would you invest in my business? The answer is always no. They have plenty of people who would look after the investment. So the fact you ask for money, that's such a naive thing to think that somehow somebody will just give you the money because you asked.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely perfect. I have never gone into if you're going to do business with someone that you're going to end up talking about money, but it should never be anywhere in the first conversations. It's going to be like you buy a car, you're going to have to fill it with gas. But
honestly, it's not even that. 99% of the time, you don't have to ask. If you simply stay focused on solving the problem, they would themselves say, hey, would you consider my investing in your business, right? And they would never say, I want to invest in your business. It's really interesting is most people who are successful don't feel that they have this right that, oh, I can ask people that I want to invest. They ask very subtle. Would you even consider if I were to want to invest in your business? And that gives them that sense of humility that you can say no, I'm sorry, I just don't need the money, right? And that is just unbelievably is that every single time when people see the true fire in your belly, they really see that you want to solve the problem, they will automatically ask you, say, I love what you're doing. Would you consider this?
That's absolutely beautiful. Now, we've got you coming on a podcast very soon on the art of making things happen, where we're going to discuss, what your point is, why you do what you do, and we get to find out about your obsession. I want to be very respectful for your time. I want to say thank you for coming on, Naveen. You have dropped some amazing truth for us, and I respect you immensely. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Naveen, I'll see you on the show soon. Thanks for being here.
Bye-bye.
Folks, you wanted to know how to communicate with a billionaire. You got 30 minutes of a billionaire's time on telling you what mistakes, what myths, how to actually turn up, how to show up and how to have a conversation. You weren't charged for this. There was no point in you being here other than to create impact. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you benefited from it. We're going to be posting this up so you can get more out of it and you can go back to it. If you know people that should be in the Speakeasy group, if you know people that should be in the Entrepreneur's Advantage, then invite them. This is for your impact. This was a little bit of a freebie for you, a little bit of a, let's get someone in. And I hope you like the twist and the surprise I had by actually bringing in a billionaire to chat with you. All the best. Do something impactful. Show up with value. Don't show up with a checkbook. All the best, crew. Look after yourself. Bye for now.